I'm going to be doing a player card analysis of the new repackaged Angmar Awaked Hero Expansion. Two nice packages. Nice little insert. Talk about the cards. And two decks that you can play from this package. I'm going to be going over the cards in order of type, starting with the Dunedain. We have Amarthiel. He's leadership. He's 10 threat. A 1/3/3/3 Dunedain Ranger Warrior. While you are engaged with at least one enemy, Amarthiel gets the Tactics resource icon. And while you are engaged with at least two enemies, add one additional resource to Amarthiel's resource pool when you collect resources during the resource phase. So he's one of the only heroes that has that ability, and the only hero that has both. So he's a very strong hero. And then we have Halbrand. He's also a leadership hero. He's 10 threat, a 2/2/2/4 Dunedain Ranger. While you engage with at least one enemy, Halbrand does not exhaust to commit to a quest. You may optionally engage one additional enemy during the encounter phase. And then we have Aragorn. This is Tactics version. He's 12 threat, 2/3/2/5 Dunedain Ranger Warrior. Each enemy engaged with you gets -1 defense. Response: after Aragorn participates in an attack that destroys an enemy, choose an enemy not engaged with you and engage that enemy. So of all three of these Dunedain heroes, we have Amarthiel, who's a good defender. Only one other hero in the game has more defense, and that's Baragond. So of these three heroes, he's your defender. And Halbrand, once you have an enemy engaged with you, he's a good quester with decent defense and hit points. And then you have Aragorn, who's your attacker. And you can see how all these heroes and this type benefit when you're engaged with enemies. And with Aragorn's response, you can destroy an enemy, and to keep an enemy engaged with you, you can engage a another enemy that's not engaged with you, so it could be with another player if you're playing more than one player, or the staging area, and engage with you, and you're still in the combat phase when you do that ability, so you could attack and destroy that enemy if you want to without having it attack you, because you're already past the attacking phase. So he's a great hero. Now going to the cards outside of the heroes. We have the Ranger Cardalon. He costs 4. He's a 2/2/2/3 Dunedain Ranger. He's neutral, so you can pay with him with any spear. And he has a response that after you engage an enemy, if you control at least one Dunedain hero, spend 1 resource to put Ranger of Cardalon into play from your hand under your control. At the end of the round, if Ranger of Cardalon is still in play, shuffle it into its owner's deck. So this is a good emergency button that if you're engaged by an unexpected attack, he can go into play because he's a response, not an action. Then you have Quick Ears. This one card I've never used. It's an lore event. It costs 1. And it's got a response where you exhaust a Dunedain or Ranger hero to cancel an enemy card just revealed from the encounter deck. Then shuffle that card into the encounter deck and reveal another encounter card. Why this card I think is not so good is because you have to exhaust one of your heroes and you still have to reveal another encounter card. It doesn't just cancel the card and not replace it. So there's a chance you could just reveal that same card again or worse, and you have an exhausted hero. Now we have Athelos. He's an attachment, lore, costs 1, and attached to a Dunedain or healer character. You an action, discard Athelos and exhaust attached character to heal all damage from a character. You may discard 1 conditional attachment from that character. This is a good card if you're playing with Dunedain because it's got a double ability and it keeps your deck thinner because not only does it heal all damage from the character, it also removes a condition attachment, so it keeps you from having to have a card that removes condition attachments and then another separate card that gets rid of the damage. So overall, it's a good card. And now we got the Sarn Forward Sentry. He's a lore ally that costs 3. He's a 2/1/0/2 Dunedain Scout with a response. After Sarn Forward Sentry enters play, draw 1 card for each enemy engaged with you. So he's a good quester and card draw. So if you've got a lot of enemies engaged with you, he can draw you a lot of cards. And he's not too expensive either for all the benefits. Now we have the East Road Ranger. He's a lore ally that costs 3. He's got 1 willpower, 2 attack, 1 defense, and 3 hit points. Dunedain Scout. And East Road Ranger gets +2 willpower when committed to a side quest. That's a new type of card that comes into this box that I'll talk about later. So for 3 costs, you have a 3 willpower hero. So it's rare to get a card that gives you 3 willpower for only the cost of 3. Besides being a decent attacker. And then you've got the Warden of Animus. He's a spirit ally. He's got cost 4. He's a 0/2/2/3 Dunedain Ranger. And the Warden of Animus gets +1 willpower for each enemy engaged with you. So if you have a lot of enemies engaged with you, he's going to have good willpower. But the only downside with this card is its stats don't really go up with what its benefit does. The stats show that it's a good defender and attacker, but its benefit, and you could say purpose of why it was made, was for willpower and questing. So it would have been better if it would have given more willpower and less attack and defense, or cost less. Because if you're questing with it, it's going to be making the other benefits that are decent benefits useless. But here's a nice card, the Fornost Bowman. He's a tactics ally, cost 3. He's a 1/1/1/3 Dunedain Ranger. He has range, so he can attack another enemy, engage with another player. If you're playing 2-player or more. And Bowman gets +1 attack for each enemy engaged with you. So his attack can build up quick if you have a lot of enemies engaged with you. So he's definitely worth it for only 3 cost. Then you have the Dunedain Hunter. He's a tactics ally, cost 0. So 1/3/1/3. So he's good attacking. The only downside is after Dunedain Hunter enters play, search the top 5 cards of the encounter deck for a non-unique enemy and put it into play engaged with you. If no enemy enters play by this effect, discard Dunedain Hunter. Shuffle the encounter deck. But he's still a decent hero even if you have to put an enemy into play with you. Especially if the enemy that goes into play is a weak enemy. Because there's a good chance that during that round you're going to be able to destroy that enemy using his ability. Then we have a Ranger Summons. He's a signal, leadership event, cost 1. Play only if you control a Dunedain hero. And a planning action. Shuffle 1 of your set-aside Ranger of the North allies with the encounter keyword into the encounter deck. Then remove Ranger summons from the game. So here's the Ranger of the North that you would shuffle into the encounter deck. He's a 2/2/2/3, so he's got decent attributes. He's a Dunedain Ranger. He has Surge when he's revealed. He's got Ranged and Sentinel. And when revealed, the first player chooses a player to take control of Ranger of the North. Then either deal 2 damage to an enemy or place 2 progress on a location. So he's got a similar type of benefit that Gandalf would have. Now you have an interesting card here. It's expensive. It's a leadership event that costs 5. Door hangs still. It's got a planning action. Until the end of the round, players do not raise their threat from questing unsuccessfully. So if you have a lot of enemies that are attacking you that you need to defend, and you have the resources, which leadership is known for having an easy way to build up resources. This is a card that you can use as an emergency to play and not quest at all and leave all your characters up for attacking and defending. And then it's got a Valor planning action where if your threat's 40 or higher, you can raise each player's threat by 2 to skip the quest phase this round. So you don't even have to worry about revealing cards. Now you've got a leadership event, Descendant of Kings, costs 1, and then action. Ready X Dunedain characters you control, where X is the number of enemies engaged with you. So this is a good ready effect if you had to, for instance, do a big quest and exhaust all your characters. You could play this card for 1 and ready all the characters equal to the number of enemies. So that is a big benefit for a cheap cost. Then we have a leadership attachment. It costs 1. The Sword of Numenor is an item weapon, and you attach to a Dunedain or Gondor hero, restricted. So you can only have 2 restricted attachments on a hero. An attached character gets +1 attack. And it has a response that after an attached hero participates in an attack that destroys an enemy with 5 or more printed hit points, exhaust Sword of Numenor to add 1 resource to attached hero's resource pool. So if you got a lot of big enemies, this is a nice card to have to do resource generation. Now here's the way to get all those allies that are a little more of an expense to them, of being 3 or higher. You got a leadership attachment, the Heir of Valor. It costs 2, and it costs 2, and you attach to a Dunedain hero. Planning action: exhaust Heir of Valor to reduce the cost of the next Dunedain ally you play this phase by 1 for each enemy engaged with you. So if you can get a lot of enemies engaged with you, or for instance, trap a lot of enemies with the forest snare, you're going to be reducing your enemies by at least, your allies by at least 1 to 2 per round. So making those cards that cost 3 and 4 down to cheap ones that cost 1 or 2. And this is not like Olorian for the Sylvans that reduces the cost. You can reduce the cost to 0, but you still have to have a resource match to a hero you play. When you play that card. And now we have the Weather Hills Watchman. He's leadership ally, cost 2. He's a 1/1/02. Dunedain. Response: after Weathered Hills Watchman enters play, search the top 5 cards of your deck for a signal and add it to your hand. Shuffle the other cards back into the deck. So signals are a card that I'm going to be showing you later that has some nice benefits. And now we have the Guardian of Aranor. He's a Dunedain Ranger. He's a leadership ally, cost 3. He's a 1/1/1/3 Sentinel. And Guardian of Aranor gets +1 defense for each enemy engaged with you. So his defense can go up quick if you have a lot of enemies engaged with you. For instance, if you had 2 enemies, he's already got 2 defense. So he's a good defender. And it doesn't matter whether his stats go down, because you only need him on the table when you're defending. Now we got the Expert Tracker. It's a lore event that costs 0, and a response: after you engage an enemy, exhaust a scout or ranger character to place X progress on a location, or X is the engage enemy's printed threat. Well, on average, most of the enemies are going to have approximately 2 threat. But if you're lucky and you engage a big enemy that costs 4, you're pretty much going to most likely explore any enemy in the game, any location in the game. So it's one nice way for location control. And the benefit for this one is, compared to, for example, the Quick Ears, that you have to exhaust a hero. Here you only need to exhaust a character. And then we have the Weather Stained Cloak. It's a lore attachment, cost 0. When a ranger character attached to a ranger character, limit 1 per character. While attached character is committed to the quest, Weather Stained Cloak gains response. Exhaust Weather Stained Cloak to cancel 1 point of damage just dealt to attached character. So this is like a cancel for cards that deal damage to questing characters. For example, the Necromancer's Reach does 1 damage to each exhausted character. So you could exhaust this to cancel that point of damage. So there's all the cards for the Dunedain and Ranger cards. Of all the heroes, I would say Aragorn gives you the best value because of his strong ability and attack. And Amarthiel I would put in second because of his good defense and his ability to create resources and be dual speared. And of the other Dunedain and Ranger cards, they're all good. But I would say some of the better ones are the Ranger of Cardolan that you can put into play when an enemy engages you, so it can prevent losing heroes. The one thing with all these lore cards is you have to find a hero that has the lore icon, and that would have to go back to the core set where you have Beravor. That's a Dunedain Ranger. And she would also give you card draw. So to get that hero into this mix, I would say the best one to take out would be Halberad, because you have 2 leadership. Now we're going to go to the Noldor cards. We're starting out with the hero Aristor. He's at 10 threat, 2/2/2/4. Noldor. And you draw 3 additional cards at the beginning of your resource phase. So with this card, you do not need to have any other type of card draw in your deck. So the benefits is thinning out your deck to put other cards in there to help you against other circumstances. But the downside is, at the end of the round, you discard all cards in your hand. So this is good in like a swarm deck when you're trying to get a lot of cards out quick that are cheap. But if you're playing a deck that you like to keep cards in your hand, for instance, Hasty Stroke and Test of Will, that you're waiting for a certain card to pop up, I would not recommend playing this card. But if you can find your way around that and playing with other cards, that one I will show you in this Noldor later on, I would say he's a good hero with decent stats. Though I have to say, I have never played this hero. And here's probably the best hero of all this expansion, is Arwen Domniel. She's a spirit hero. 9 threat, a 3, 1, 2, 3. So she's got good willpower. And she's a Noldor noble. An action, discard a card from your hand to add 1 resource to a Noldor hero's resource pool or to Aragorn's resource pool. Limit once per round. So she's good at resource generation. And that is a help playing with Aristor, because it makes you be able to produce more resources each round, so you can play your cards that you have in your hand. Then we have Galdor of the Havens. The lore ally, 4 cost, 2/2/1/4, Nordal. Response: after 1 or more cards you discard from your hand, draw a card. Limit once per round. So this goes good with the Arwen, because after you discard a card to get a resource, you also get to draw a card. So it's like you gain a resource and draw a card with the same ability. Now we have the Tale of Tinuvial. It's a spirit event, song. Action: exhaust a Nordal character to ready a Dunedain character, or vice versa, until the end of the phase. Add the exhausted character's printed willpower to the other character's willpower, attack, and defense. So this is a nice card for characters that have high willpower. And there's also ways of cards that can increase the willpower. So just, for instance, the Arwen, you could exhaust her to give another character +3 willpower, attack, or defense until the end of the round. Until the end of the phase. And here's a nice card. Lords of the Eldar. It's a spirit event. 3 cost. Lords of the Eldar can only be played from your discard pile. Place Lords of the Eldar at the bottom of your deck from your discard pile. Then, until the end of the round, all Nordal characters get +1 willpower, attack, and defense. So you're starting to get a little bit of the theme that Nordal is for discarding cards and playing cards from your discard pile. So this is a nice card, especially if you're playing a lot of Noldor characters. And if you get to a point in your game where you're at hardly any cards in your deck, you could keep playing that round after round. Now here's a nice event. It's a spirit event. It costs 1, fair and perilous. Choose a Noldor or Sylvan character until the end of the phase. Add that character's willpower to its attack. So similar to the Tale of Tinuvial, where you have to exhaust another character to add the willpower to the other character. Attack, willpower, attack, or defense. Here, if you have a character that has good willpower, all you need to do is add the willpower to the attack. You do not need to exhaust a character. And here's probably the best event you will get in this expansion, is the Elven Light. It's a spirit event, costs 1. Elven Light can only be played from your discard pile. Return Elven Light to your hand from your discard pile, then draw a card. So here's a good example with when things can really get going. You discard the Elven Light, draw a card with Galdor of the Havens, and you gain a resource, and then you can spend that resource that you gained and put the Elven Light back in your hand. So it ended up that you drew 2 cards for the cost of 0. And here's nice here. It's the Steed of Imladris. It's a spirit attachment that costs 1. It's a mount, and you can attach it to a spirit or Noldor hero. Restricted. Response: After attached hero commits to a quest, discard a card from your hand to place 1 progress on the active location. 2 progress on the active location. So that is another way you can use Elven Light. Is you can discard Elven Light and then put 2 progress on the active location, and then have the Elven Light in your discard pile to be able to draw cards. Because you can only use Arwen's ability once per round. So this is, if you want to do it 2 times in a round, and you have the Steed of Imladris down, it's a good way to keep your card draw engine going. And now the Star Brooch. It's a spirit attachment, costs 1, and you attach to a Dunedain or Noldor hero, limit 1 per hero. While you are engaged with an enemy, attached hero gets +1 willpower and can't have its willpower reduced. So if you like to get your willpower increased and have a chance that cards that reduce your willpower not be effective, then this is similar to the card where Weatherstained Cloak, where you can exhaust the Weatherstained Cloak to cancel a point of damage dealt to a character during the quest phase. But this is not so effective because there's not that many encounter cards that reduce a character's threat, except for in the Dwardale cycle. In the Red Horn Gate, this is a good card to have because you get penalized if your willpower is low, and there's cards that reduce your willpower to punish you. But here's another good card here. It's a Spirit Attachment. Cost 2, an item, instrument. Attached to a spirit hero, restricted. After a card is discarded from your hand, exhaust Silver Harp to return it to your hand. Now we have a 4-card combo. You discard Elven Light, gain a resource, draw a card because of Galdor the Haven's ability, and you can exhaust the harp to put it back in your hand. So you just got a resource and a card for no cost. And this also goes with Aristor, because at the end of the round you discard all cards, but what you can do is exhaust Silver Harp and keep one of those cards in your hand. So if you can get 3 of the Silver Harps attached to your Spirit Heroes, if you're playing with 2 Spirit Heroes, you can keep 3 of the cards each round and not discard them, making this hero one of the best heroes in the game. And now we have a Spirit Ally, Lindir, cost 3. He's a 2, 1, 2, 2, Noldor. Its response that after Lindir enters play, if you have less than 3 cards in your hand, draw until you have 3 cards. Then we have another Spirit Ally, the Elven Jeweler, cost 2. She's a 1, 1, 1, 2, Noldor Craftsman. It's an action. Discard 2 cards from your hand to put Elven Jeweler into play from your hand under your control. So it's like using your cards as resources. And Noldor is key on having that ability. And now we go over again to Aristor. To use up your cards, you can just discard cards in your hand to put, for instance, the Elven Jeweler into play. And then when you get to the end of the round, you might have no cards in your hand. So then that effect of discarding all your cards is out of the question because it doesn't mean anything. And lastly, you have an Elven Spear. It's a tactics attachment, cost 0, an item, weapon, and you attach to a Noldor or Sylvan hero. Restricted. Discard 1 card from your hand to give attached hero +1 attack until the end of the phase. You can limit 3 times per phase. So that gives you some nice attack and a way to get rid of cards. And it's another way you can use the Elven Light to be able to get it into your discard pile. So overall, I would say that Arwen was the best hero of the Noldor, and the Elven Light as the best event, Silver Harp as the best attachment, and Galdor of the Havens as the best ally. And all 3 of those together, your deck's going to be rocking. Now we're going to go over to the Ents. With these Ents, you can really get your deck going. They're strong for a cheap cost, but the only problem is they're Ents. And Ents are sleepy, sort of tree-ish, as you might say, and they need to be roused. We have the Welling Hall Preserver. He's a lore ally, cost 3, 3 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, and 3 hit points. An Ent. You can't have restricted attachments, and he enters play exhausted. So you need to rouse him. And it has a response. After Welling Hall Preserver readies, heal 1 damage to an Ent character. So he is a very good healer with strong willpower and decent attack and defense for only the cost of 3. And here's a card that benefits well with him, is the Dunedain Warrior. He's a tactics ally, cost 2. So 1, 1, 2, 3, Ent warrior, sentinel. Can't have restricted attachment, and that is with all Ents. But they're powerful enough without needing attachments. It enters play exhausted, but it has a nice action. Well, Dunedain Warrior is defending, or Dunedain Warrior is defending. It gains action. Deal 1 damage to Dunedain Warrior to give it +3 defense for this attack. Limit once per attack. So you deal 1 damage to the Dunedain Warrior. He goes up to 5 defense. He could defend a hill troll and not get destroyed. Every single round, if you have the Welling Hall Berserker in play. As you defend, deal the damage, and then the next round you heal it up from the Welling Hall Berserker. So these two cards are like a team. So this is a great card for the only cost of 2. Now we have Beachbone. He's a tactics ally, cost 3. The 2, 2, 1, 4. Ent. Can't have restricted attachments and enters play exhausted. And a response. After Beachbone is declared as an attacker, deal 1 damage to him. To deal X damage to a defending enemy. X is the amount of damage on Beachbone. So without any added hit points, you could deal 1 damage to Beachbone and then 3 damage to another character. And you can destroy a lot of characters because they'll have only 3 hit points or less. And if you can find ways to put more hit points onto Beachbone, he can just start destroying characters left and right. Because you could deal a damage and then deal 3 damage to a character, and then the Dunedain Warrior could ready up and heal that damage, and then you could do it again the next round. So you're starting to see that little bit of a train that could keep going. And then the other Ent card is an event. Tactics, cost 1. Boomed and trumpeted. Response. After an Ent character takes any amount of damage, ready it. That character gets +3 until the end of the phase. So these Ents might come in exhausted, but there's cards that can ready him up, like Boomed and Trumpeted. And once they get ready, they can be dangerous. Now we're going over to the side quests. And a side quest is a card you put into play next to the main quest. And you decide when you're in the questing phase, before you reveal cards, which quest you want to go to. The side quest or the main quest. And whichever one you pick, it's the current quest until the end of the quest phase. But if you choose the side quest, once the quest phase is over, the main quest becomes the current quest. So this is a good way if you want to avoid nasty things that might happen when you place progress on the main quest. For there are some quests in the game that you'll get penalized putting progress on the quest. But these cards are good in quests where you don't need quest points on the main quest. So you can just, instead of wasting your progress onto a quest that doesn't need any, you could be exploring side questing, build up your board state. And for example, in the course box, you have Journey Along the Anduin, where you need 8 quest points to fulfill the quest, but you can't move on until the hill troll is in the victory display. So once you get the 8 quest points and the hill troll is still in play, you could start going to side quests and clear them. So we have gather information that cost 4. It's limit 1 per deck, with a response that when this stage is defeated, each player may search their deck for 1 card and add it to their hand. So this is a good card for example getting the Elven Light, which gets the Noldor engine running, or getting a Dunedain Warrior and Wellinghall Reserver. And it's neutral. Then we have the Scout Ahead. Cost 0, 4 quest points, and limit 1 per deck. And has a response that when this stage is defeated, the first player searches the top X cards of the encounter deck for a non-objective card worth no victory points and adds it to the victory display. Put the remaining cards back in any order. And X is the number of players in the game plus 4. So the victory display is where it's pretty much removed from the game. So it gets rid of nasty cards. And here we have a Spirit side quest. It costs 0, 4 quest points, limit 1 per deck, and when the stage is defeated, reduce each player's threat by 5. So going back to the Journey Along the Anduin, you could explore this, reduce your threat by 5, and have a lot more rounds to prepare for the hill troll. And the delay the enemy, I would say, is the weakest side quest. So tactics, and it needs 8 quest points to fulfill it. It's limit 1 per deck, and you use your attack instead of willpower. For this quest, it's a battle. And with a response that when this stage is defeated, each player may choose and discard 1 non-unique enemy engaged with that player. So why I think this is not so good is because the characters that you're attacking, you're exhausting to quest. You could easily just destroy the enemy and get him out of play instead of exhausting them, and then a card comes up and you don't quest with enough to fulfill it, and then you got enemies attacking you and you have exhausted characters. And then we have a leadership side quest. It costs 1, 6 quest points, limit 1 per deck, and response. When this stage is defeated, each player may search the top 10 cards of their deck for an ally and put it into play under their control. Each player who did shuffles their deck. So this is a nice card for putting big allies into play because you put them into play for free, and also they don't require a resource match. Now, just to add the bang for your buck, you have a lore event that costs 1, the Long Defeat, attached to a quest card in play. Limit 1 per quest. Response. After attached quest is defeated, each player either draws 2 cards or heals up to 5 damage among characters they control. And this can be attached to either the side quest or the main quest. And if you got a lot of cards play that have damage, you can heal up to 5 damage when it's explored. And if you have the hero Elrond, he has an ability that when you heal the damage from a character, heal additional damage. So if this comes down with, well, he is in play, you could equal up to healing up to 10 damage for the cost of 1. So I would say overall that the gather information and the scout ahead were the 2 best encounters. And now we're going to go to cards that deal with the victory display. We have a lore event that costs 1. Leave No Trace. Limit 3 copies of Leave No Trace in the victory display. After a non-unique location is explored, add Leave No Trace to the victory display to add this location to the victory display. So it gets rid of nasty locations, so you don't go back into the encounter deck. Now you have a lore event that costs 1, none return. And this one is limit 3 copies of none return in the victory display, and has a response that after a non-unique enemy is destroyed, add none return to the victory display to add that enemy to the victory display. So that one's for enemies. And now we have the doors closed. The lore event costs 1 with a response. After a card is revealed from the encounter deck, cancel its effects and discard it if there is a card with the same title in the victory display. So this is very powerful when you have a lot of different cards in the victory display, because not only does it cancel the card, it cancels all the effects of the card. So if it has any surge, it's not going to go into effect. And now we have the Keena's Lances. It costs 5. You might think that that's high cost, but it has an ability. Reduce the cost to play Keena's Lances by 1 for each card worth no victory points in the victory display. And then action. Add Keena's Lances to the victory display, then choose 1. Add 2 resources to a hero's resource pool. Draw 3 cards, or reduce your threat by 4. So even if you just played a none return, that's going to reduce this down to 3. And after you play this, the next one will only cost 2. So as soon as you get 5 cards in the victory display, it's going to be costing 0. And think of that if you're playing multiplayer. Of all those cards are going to build up quick. So that is a very good, it's a key staple to have in your deck if somebody is playing a victory display deck. Now we're going to go over to the miscellaneous cards. We have an honor guard. Actually, these are valor cards, where threats 40 or higher. The honor guard is a tactics ally. It costs 2. 0, 0, 1, 3. Response: exhaust honor guard to cancel 1 point of damage just dealt to a character. So, canceling and healing are 2 different things. And when you heal, the damage has already been done. And when you cancel the damage from damaging the character. So if you have only a character with 1 hit point, and the card says, deal 1 damage to the defending character, that character is going to get destroyed, and it's going to become an undefended attack. And the healing is not going to be able to heal the damage before it destroys the character. But with the honor guard, he cancels the damage. So you could exhaust the honor guard and cancel that damage. And your character would still survive. And then it has a Valor action. Exhaust and discard the honor guard to cancel up to 5 damage just dealt to a character. Then we have hold your ground. Action. He's a tactics event that costs 1. And he has an action. Choose and ready a sentinel character. And a Valor action, ready all sentinel characters. So even if you only have 1, this card is a good card to have. But if you have multi cards that have sentinel, this one is great. And now we have Hope Rekindled. It's a song, an action. Reduce the cost of the next event you play that has Valor by 2. Valor action. Search the top 10 cards of your deck for an event that has a Valor trigger and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. So this is a way to search your deck for Valor cards and play Valor cards for a cheaper cost. Now we have a good card that's the Horn's Cry. It's a tactics event that costs 2. Action. All enemies get -1 attack until the end of the phase. As a Valor action, choose an enemy. Choose a player. Each enemy engaged with that player gets -3 until the end of the phase. So that's a nice, like with a Dunedain deck, when you have a lot of enemies in play, you can make them all get -3 attack. And then we have the Rallying Cry. It's a leadership event with a cost 2 with a response. After an ally leaves play, add it to its owner's hand instead of placing it in the discard pile. And a Valor action until the end of the phase. Add each ally that leaves play to its owner's hand instead of placing it in the discard pile. So of all those cards, I would say the Honor Guard was the best card. Now we have two heroes. We got Raziel, Spirit Hero with 8 threat, 2 willpower, 1 attack, 2 defense, 3 hit points. Sylvan. If the active location shares a trait with a location in the victory display, Raziel gets +2 willpower, and if attacking enemy shares a trait with an enemy in the victory display, Raziel gets +2 defense. So if you have the same location and trait of an enemy attacking, Raziel now is 4 willpower and 4 defense. So she's a good hero to have when you're playing a victory display deck. And she only cost 8. And now we have, you could argue, as one of the best heroes, Spirit Mary. He's 6 threat, 2 willpower, 1 attack, 1 defense, 2 hit points, Hobbit. Response. After an enemy is revealed from the top of the encounter deck, exhaust Mary to reduce your threat by that enemy's threat. So if you're trying to avoid enemies, if there's no enemies revealed, you're not going to be engaging enemies. And if you reveal an enemy, you can reduce your threat by that enemy's threat to help yourself have lower threats so you don't have to engage those enemies. And he's good in even a non-Hobbit deck if you want to keep your threat low. Now we have a bunch of miscellaneous cards here. We got Tireless Hunters. It's a tactics event that costs 1 and play only before resolving enemy attacks. Step. Combat action. Choose an enemy not engaged with you. Engage that enemy. Then discard 1 shadow card from that enemy. So if you're playing a Dunedain deck, you can engage enemies, engage with another player, discard their shadow cards, engage them. And here's probably the best of all these miscellaneous cards, is the Hour of Wrath. It's one of my favorite. It's a tactics event that costs 4. Action. Choose a hero until the end of the phase. The chosen hero does not exhaust to attack or defend. And then a Valor action. Choose a player until the end of the phase. Each of that player's heroes does not exhaust to attack or defend. I've played this where I've had a strong defender and attacker and destroyed everything on the board. Now we have a Secret Vigil. It's a tactics attachment, costs 1. Attached to an enemy, limit 1 per enemy. Attached enemy gets -1. So if you attach it to the enemy in the staging area, it reduces their threat when you quest. So it's like giving you an extra willpower. And a response that when attached enemy is destroyed, reduce each player's threat by the attacking. Now we have a Raven Winged Helm. It's a tactics attachment, cost 2. Item armor. Attached to a hero with Sentinel, limit 1 per hero. Response. Exhaust Raven Winged Helm to cancel 1 point of damage just dealt to attached character. So this has a similar ability as the Honor Guard, where you exhaust the Honor Guard to cancel 1 point of damage just dealt to a character. Except for this has to be the character that's attached to. Then we got a Longbeard Sentry. It's a Tactics Ally, costs 3. A 0, 1, 2, 3 Dwarf Warrior with an action. Discard 2 cards from the top of your deck to give Longbeard Sentry Sentinel and +1 defense until the end of the phase. Limit once per phase. So it's a chief ability for the benefit. And there are some cards in dwarf decks that benefit from being discarded from the top of your deck. And now we have Eosain. He's a leadership ally, costs 4, 2, 2, 1, 3, Rohan Warrior. Response. After a Rohan ally is discarded from play by a card effect, ready Eosain. So to be able to get this, you have to have a lot of Rohan allies that are discarded. Now we have the Dunedain Messenger. It's a signal. So going back to the Weatherhill's Watchman, or after Weatherhill's Watchman enters play, search the top 5 cards of your deck for a signal card and add it to your hand. Here's this one, searches your deck for a side quest. So it's like having 2 side quests in your deck instead of 1. Now we got the Veteran of Miscellaneous. It's leadership ally, cost 3. He's a 1, 2, 1, 2 Gondor Warrior. And Veteran of Miscellaneous gets +1 willpower, defense, attack, defense, while your threat is 40 or higher. And if you read this carefully, it does not say Valor. So even if your quest is above 40 and you're not in Valor, that there are quests in the saga, this will still trigger. I'll get Ingold. He's a leadership ally, cost 3, 0 willpower, 1 attack, 1 defense, 3 hit points. Gondor. Ingold gets +1 willpower for each hero you control with at least 1 resource in his resource pool. So this is a thing that goes on with Gondor heroes that give you benefit while they have resources in the resource pool. Vormir, he gives all Gondor allies +1 attack while he has resources in his resource pool. And now, Swordthane. This card is costly, but it's neutral. It's an attachment. Attach it to a unique ally belonging to any sphere of influence, so you can't attach it to neutral cards. Attached character loses the ally card type and gains the hero card type. So this is a good way to get some of your big allies, the heroes. can make you get more spears in play and produce more resources. And then there's a lot of attachments that can only go on heroes. And I would say Sword Thane is most famous for Rosy Cotton. That when you exhaust her, you add her willpower to a Hobbit hero's willpower, attack, or defense. Now we got Favor of the Valor. It's neutral, cost 3, and attached to a player's threat dial. Limit 1 per player. Forced. When you would be eliminated by reaching your threat elimination level, instead discard Favor of the Valor and reduce your threat by 5, less than your elimination level. You are not eliminated. And the nice thing with this card is it is reduce your threat by 5 from your threat elimination level. So even if you would quest unsuccessfully or raise your threat by 10, you would still reduce your threat by 5 below the elimination level, so it would be like you're reducing your threat by 15. So this is a good card to have in quests where you raise your threat. I have the Ranger provisions. It's a leadership attachment, costs 1. It's an item attached to a location. Limit 1 per location. Response. After attached location is explored, the first player adds 1 resource to each of their hero's resource pools. So it's a nice way to get resources. Now we have Elf Friend. It's a neutral attachment. It costs 1. Attached to a character. Attached character gains the Noldor and Sylvan traits. So this is key when you're playing with cards that read attached to a Noldor or Sylvan character, or you can only be played if you have a Noldor or Sylvan character. For instance, Elrond's Consul. Reduce your threat by 3, but you can only play it if you have a Noldor hero. That's unique. So this card is good in unique situations. And now we have a Galadriel Healer. It's a lore ally that costs 2. She's a 1/0/1/1 Sylvan Healer. Response. After Galadriel Healer enters play, choose a player. Heal 1 damage to each hero controlled by that player. So this is a nice card when you have hero Elrond in play. Or when character is healed, heal an additional damage. So if you have 3 characters that all have 2 damage, heroes that all have 2 damage, you could play the Galadriel Healer and heal all 6 damage for only the cost of 2. And you would get a cheap ally into play. So this card is, I would say, a staple when you're playing with Elrond. And then we have the Galadriel Weaver. She's a spirit ally, costs 1. She's a 1/0/0/1 Sylvan Craftsman, can't attack or defend. Response. After Galadriel Weaver enters play, shuffle the top card of your discard pile into your deck. In Sylvan decks, there's a lot of action cards that are very beneficial. So to shuffle them back into your deck is very helpful. So she is one of the best Sylvan allies. Now we have a Hobbit pony. It's a spirit attachment, cost 0, a mount, attached to a Hobbit hero, restricted. Quest action. If attached hero is not committed to the quest, exhaust it and the Hobbit pony to commit attached hero to the quest. Now we go over to Mary. With Mary's ability, after an enemy is revealed from the top of the encounter deck, exhaust Mary to reduce your threat by that enemy's threat. Well, if Mary's already exhausted, you can't reduce your threat, but you could attach the Hobbit pony, and then if an enemy is revealed, you would have the option to either reduce your threat or exhaust the Hobbit pony and commit Mary to the quest. So it gives you a lot of leverage. And it works good with other Hobbit heroes as well. And then we have a Curious Brandybuck. It's a spirit ally that costs 2. It's a 2/0/02 Hobbit. Force. When the active location is explored, place Curious Brandybuck on the bottom of the owner's deck. So it's a cheap way to get 2 willpower, but then it has that response. After you travel to a location, you can put Curious Brandybuck into play from your hand under any player's control. So there's a cheap way to get it in, but most likely it's only going to last 1 round unless you don't travel to locations. But if you're looking for a chump blocker and you put him in for free, it works good. And the last card, it's a leadership event. Cost 3, reinforcements. You must use resources from 3 different heroes to pay for this event. So most likely what they were thinking is you'll be playing a mono leadership deck. But there is ways when you expand the card pool to be able to get additional resource icons to different characters. And it's got an action. The players as a group can put up to 2 allies into play from their hand. Each of these allies may enter play under any player's control. At the end of the phase, return each of those allies that are still in play to their owner's hand. So it's like a group sneak attack. The benefit is any player can put the cards into play, but the negative effect is it costs 3, and it has to be played from 3 different heroes, compared to a sneak attack that you only need 1 resource and puts 1 into play. For the cost of 3, you could put 3 sneak attacks into play, and 3 cards. But if you're playing in a group, with 1 player playing a mono leadership, it's a good card to have, because you could have a surprise enemies attacking, and you can put these under any player's control instead of just into your play area. So that finishes up the player card analysis for the Angmar Awaked expansion. And what I'm going to be doing for new players who only have the revised core set, the starter decks, and the Angmar Awaked expansion, I'm going to be making decks that only use those cards to show you how, even with this smaller card pool, you can still make good decks. And then after that, I'm going to show you of cards outside of the card pool, how much bigger the decks can be with only a small cost, and show you some different combos of how the decks will play together. See you in the next video. Have a great day and thanks for watching.